Hello, welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I'm your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and joining me today is a man you've probably heard of, you've probably seen, you're probably following online, to be quite honest, Jeff Sokol of sokolstrong.com. He is a colleague I've been in touch with for a very long time on social media, but this is actually the first time we're speaking in real time as opposed to through messages and comments on posts and things like that. And we're going to have a great conversation today about his origin story, how he discovered the kettlebell, and how he's gone on to become this. I don't want to say the word influencer, because it's got kind of like a cheesy connotation, but we could say like the right kind of influencer, let's say, in the world of kettlebells, strength training, and all around being a tough, manly, strong dude. And so we're going to jump into that in a moment. I always like to remind my listeners that if you haven't already, you should get my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. It is, as the name implies, only 9 minutes long, and it is comprised of movements that are very simple to learn, particularly ones that center around the gait pattern. So it's gonna recruit every muscle in your body. It's gonna teach you how to get everything moving in unison the way that it's supposed to. What I like most about it is that it is made to complement your training, not complicate it. So that means you can toss it in with whatever else you're doing, and you're not going to notice any sort of detracting from what you're doing. You're probably going to find your training gets better. So that's 9minutechallenge.com. You can go get your free copy, and you can begin to go forth and crush weakness. Speaking of crushing weakness, no better person to have on the show than Jeff Sokol, who has been crushing weakness all the live long day for quite some time. Thank you for being here.
Brother, I'm so honored to be here, man. Like you said, I've known of you for a long time, nothing but the utmost respect for you and what you do. You move well, you're smart, you work with passion, you're no BS, not a sellout to the fitness industry, just a good guy sending a good message. And yeah, man, it's good to be here with you.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. I mean, like I said, I've been following you, I think, almost since the beginning. I don't know when exactly you got involved with kettlebells, meaning like where on the timeline it was, but I know that it was probably toward the beginning of the days of Strong First is when I first started following you. So we're coming in on almost 10 years now, and I mean, I've watched your continuous rise in the world of kettlebell training. You've always got this amazing content, but I know that kettlebells are somewhat new on the scene, let's say, in terms of fitness, and it probably wasn't always like that, and I was, before the podcast, I was thinking, I really don't know, other than a couple of biographical tidbits, I don't really know a whole lot about you. And so I'm curious, what is your origin story like? Were you like athletic as a kid? Were you very into physical fitness and that sort of a thing, or is that something that you discovered later in life?
Well, going way back, my mom had me really young, and I was born in San Jose, California. And when I was 3, she had moved me up to this itty bitty little town, logging town in Washington called Morton, Washington. Right. So I don't even know that whole story. She tried to tell me a couple times, but she gets really emotional. So in a little tidbit on that, with my name Sokol, that's my adopted name from the man that raised me. So a lot of people assume that I'm some type of Eastern European or something like that with the Sokol name. And it works great for being in kettlebells, but I'm actually pretty much Irish to the core. And I never knew that until just recently, because like I said, my mom and I really didn't talk about my origin story as far as all that goes in the background in that. But anyways, growing up in a town like that, you basically were into working on cars or playing sports or a little of both. And I was raised in just a little double wide trailer in a small neighborhood, as some people might even say, poor white trash. I don't, whatever, but you didn't have a lot, but didn't need a lot either. Right. I was provided for. But I got into playing t-ball as soon as I could, and then started playing tackle football when I was like 8 years old, 9 years old. And, when you're playing in a town like that, it's physical. Everything is physical, right? So I've always had this like physicalness to me, and like a hard work ethic, because I didn't get up and get on my iPad and play a bunch of games. I had to go out and chop some kindling, make sure the fire was stoked before my mom got up. So my dad was already at work, just working all the time. So as far as athletic, I was pretty good, but I was in a town of I had 23 kids in my graduating class, right? So if you were decent at anything, you were pretty damn good, right? There wasn't a whole lot of competition, but yeah, I wasn't really into the weightlifting stuff or anything until probably around my freshman year of high school. And we didn't have a strength coach, but we had a local guy that, gripped and ripped, right? So he gave me my first introduction into, how can strength help your performance and whatnot, and that, I suppose, is part of what led me here today. But I can honestly say, as far as a coach is being concerned, I never considered being a coach of anything but baseball or football or some type of youth stuff, and then from that little Morton town, my junior year of high school, the logging was going down. That would have been like in the 88, 89. There was a nice little bird called the spotted owl, and it's important to preserve nature or whatnot. But this spotted owl apparently needed, I don't know how many acres, like 30 acres of old growth timber to flourish. So the logging industry started going down a bit, and my parents knew that we had to get out of there. So we moved 60 miles north of Seattle to a town called Mount Vernon, which is basically a farming community. So I went from a logging community to a farmer community, but much bigger. I mean, I probably had 100 and some kids in my graduating class there. So I went from a B11 school to a AAA school. I don't know if that makes any sense to you or the listeners, but it's this kind of classification for how many students there are in a school. And then I started to realize that I was a lot more athletic than I thought, because I was around a bunch of bigger kids, and especially like in the football arena, because they didn't start playing football until they were, somewhere around the 9th grade or 8th grade. So I just had, and that's also while I'm so obsessed with skill, because I was never the biggest guy, but all those years of playing football, I understand leverage, I understand quickness, I understood physicality. And, I was always brought up, if you hit them harder than they hit you, you'll never get hurt, which was basically true, aside from knocking myself out a few times. But even from there, I never thought of, I was kind of a gym rat, your classical, push, pull one day, hinge and squat another day, back buys, leg shoulders, kettlebells, no idea, zero idea of anything like that. And then after a couple of years there in Mount Vernon, I took off to the military, and I would say the military was easy, especially like Navy boot camp is pretty much, you probably get out of shape when you go there. But I think growing up around hard men that their volume was at 10 all the time, a lot of yelling, a lot of physicality and stuff like that. So that upbringing and that hard work ethic and stuff made all that kind of stuff easy, and then I did find out in the military that I did have this leadership thing in me, because it always seemed that I was getting picked to be the master at arms in boot camp, and then I was getting picked to lead this or lead that or whatever, right? So, but again, still never rid of a thing in me that that maybe I should, be a leader in fitness or anything like that. And then after 8 years of total service, I got out and went back to that Mount Vernon town, and was there for, God, I suppose maybe, well, I guess I might as well say this. I got out on a Friday and worked my way back home, and my dad worked for the city of Mount Vernon, and a garbage truck driver had a heart attack. And my dad's like, you want to start working Monday? So I had no transition from military to work life. So I started riding on the back of a garbage truck, minute work style, hucking cans and playing pranks and having, it was kind of fun. But after about 6 or 8 months of that, I was like, this ain't it. I'm not ready to be here. I'm not ready to be in Mount Vernon. I'm not ready to just say, screw this. This is my life. And I know I'm rambling here, but I packed. Yeah, man, I packed. I had a Toyota truck that I bought with some of my money from the military, and I wish I still had it. But anywho, packed that full of what I could pack, fit in there, and I drove off to Utah because I felt like I needed to be in a place where I could snowboard, I could mountain bike, I could just kind of reconnect with nature, so to speak. And I ended up getting this job. I guess the closest thing to equate it would be like The Simpsons, man. I mean, it was this like low level hazardous waste site, and got there and the same old stuff. I worked my way up there, bought a house, got married. And then about a year and a half into marriage, I married a Mormon gal that was not Mormon at the time, because they had walked away from the church, her and a group of friends, during college. And then next thing you know, I was getting pressure to become a Mormon, and all, whatever your faith is and stuff. I have no problem with that. But it wasn't for me. That led to divorce. Then so the divorce was I was sure it was gonna happen. So winter was just starting and I was 30 something, I guess. And I thought, well, I can just leave right now. Or I thought, what if something I've always wanted to do? Because I had nothing to lose. I'm like, screw it, I'm not staying in Utah, So I went and I was a lifty. I was at a ski resort called Solitude. I was like Grandpa Lifty. I spent a winter there just snowboarding and sitting in that top shack, thinking about life and all that good stuff. And then decided one day pack basically about the same amount of stuff I could fit in my truck, except for I'd upgraded to a larger Toyota, and took off my gloves, threw them in the yard, and never returned, and started to try and figure out life in Mount Vernon. So I'm one of those guys that's recreated himself several times. And it always seems that I was at my happiest when I had the least amount of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I could go on from there, but I guess the kettlebell stuff, if you want me to get into where that started, I could go there now. But
well, I'll tell you, I wanna jump in and say, it's a pretty impressive to see how much ground we've covered and how many things that you've accomplished, even by the time you were in your early 30s. A lot of people, I think, don't really understand the difficulty that goes with having to sort of reinvent yourself. I've found myself in that position a couple times as well, and it's no great shakes. It's like there's a lot of. I mean, I look back and I'm very happy that it happened, because it's one of those things that gives you a new opportunity where a lot of people don't get them. But it is definitely very, very challenging, and I think that your experience with having gotten out of the military and being like, okay, well, now what? And then just climbing onto the next thing that you can find and going from there is something I think a lot of people are afraid to do, because I think people want stability and they want sureness of whatever it is that they're doing. And it takes a lot of guts to be like, you know what? I got nothing to lose. Why don't I just, pack up? I've got no reason to stay here in particular. I can keep clinging to what I know out of fear of the unknown, or I can go embrace the unknown and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so when I came back from Utah, one of my buddies from high school, Alaskan fisherman, great guy. He owned a duplex in Mount Vernon, so he would fish during the summers and kind of stay at his duplex during the winters. And I had no idea what I was going to do, right? So I'm driving back, and I'm not in the best mind frame right now either, right? I'm like, driving home with my seatbelt off, hoping I fell asleep at the wheel type of mindset. I just wasn't in a good headspace when I was coming back, right? I ain't gonna lie about that. But I wasn't gonna give up either, right? I made the trip, and then I called my buddy. I'm like, hey, bud, I'm coming back to Mount Vernon. He's like, what? He's like, I've been living in this duplex by myself every summer forever. You just want to move in, bro? And so I go over there, and right behind his house is his best friend, who also right behind his best friend's house is a delivery service. You know, they have semi trucks and they go around, deliver to Subways and bars and restaurants and all this stuff. And this guy, Bob, rest in peace, just recently suddenly died of a heart attack. Weird. But anywho, he comes over and he's all stressed out. He's like, hey man, I'm getting ready to go to Hawaii to my buddy, you know, and he's like, one of our drivers just got caught taking $5 from a Subway cash till. So obviously I got to fire him, but we're a small family business. I don't have nobody to cover his route. So I'm going to have to do it as the boss. And then Steven looks at me and he goes, Jeff needs a job. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you ever drive semi truck? I'm like, nope, I have no idea. And he's like, you think that you have the ability to get your CDL in 3 weeks? I'm like, sure, I'll figure it out. So again, I got home on a weekend and now I'm riding with truck drivers at midnight on a Monday. So now I'm learning how to drive a truck and routes and delivering groceries. And I needed a job. So I gave him that good old fashioned that I'll give you 5 years if you give me a job. Right. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, I'm driving semis around all over, delivering groceries. You know, that goes on for about 5 years, but it's the same pattern of, you know, working to pay for shit that I don't necessarily need stuff. Sorry, earmuffs. And just no real passion involved in it, right? It was serving its purpose. I was alone at night, delivering groceries. It was kind of fun because I was worried about being mugged everywhere I went. You know, it was, you know, I mean, it was pretty wild, actually. I can tell you some stories about that job. That's crazy. But anyway, so I did that for 5 years. And then all of a sudden, one of my military buddies said, hey, man, he worked for the government. And he's like, you know, I could get you a job. And in Mount Vernon, it's a very sought after job because you have your benefits, you have your 401k, you got sick leave, vacation, you have all these things, and it's gravy, right? So I told my boss, you know, hey man, I've been here. Well, actually, I gave him 6 years. You know, I'm thinking about getting into that steady Eddie job. You know, I can't see myself schlepping groceries at 60. Yeah, it's just probably not going to work, right? And that job had kept me in pretty decent shape, you know, because when I say schlepping groceries, I'm talking like filling up a hand truck, and I was filling up so heavy when I go off the back of the ramp, I have to carry extra wheels and axles because I would break the axles of the hand truck because I'd have so much weight on there, you know. So it kept me kind of fit, you know. But then I got to the DOT. I probably didn't want to say it out loud, but it was my first like union job. With as much, if not more, bureaucracy than the military, right? So next thing you know, I'm in this organization where, like, one of my first days being set out on my own, they gave me a bunch of these highway delineators, those little things on 2-lane roads that reflect, and they, you know, they kind of give with the wind, but they get broken all the time. They're like, go drive down Highway 9, pull those things out and pound in new ones. In place of them, right? So I'm out there on my own, and I'm just going full speed. And I get back, and when you fill out your time card, you have to write like codes, like I did this and this many units, you know, and I did like 80 of them. And I got yelled at by my boss. They're like, brother, this is like a 20 type of thing, you know, you're working too hard, you're working too fast, right? And I was like, what? So if I was going to stay there, I realized I had to become that, or I was gonna, right? So during that process, I went from like 185, and before I walked away from the DOT, I was pushing 250.
Wow.
You know, yeah, like eating donuts at the safety meetings, driving around, burning diesel all day. You know, I mean, the job was cool when there was a windstorm. You had to go out there with chainsaws and cut trees out of roads. And when it snowed, you're in a snowplow doing all that stuff. But when there's really no need for you on any given day, you could literally drive around for 12 hours, just shooting the shit, stopping at Jack in the Box, you know, complaining about an hour-long lunch out in the middle of the woods, you know, and I was like, what's wrong with you people? But so anyways, that, my head is a little rattled from whatever experiences my life gave me, or chemically imbalanced. I don't know. But that stuff really started putting me down in a hole, man. Like those last 2 years there, I was not a good guy. People didn't want to be around me. I was just drinking, just, like giving up, right? Just like, oh, screw it. I'm just going to be a fat, no offense, fat people, but I'm just going to not care. I'm just going to do this and do that and whatever. And then, well, I guess I have to say this. Before that, I'd gotten married again, right? I'm a real failure at this situation, unfortunately, to a school teacher. And that didn't work out because I went into it. Well, there's more than because. I'm not making excuses, but I knew at a young age I was never going to have children. And if there was one effect from the military, I would say that I knew I didn't want to have children after serving in Somalia. When you see kids dead and die, and there's nothing you can do about it, something happened. I can't explain it, but something happened. And she's like, I'm a school teacher. I don't want to have kids. And then, a year and some change into it, I think we should have kids. I can't keep you from doing that. I don't think it would be right to make me do that. So there we go. Right. Yeah. And so this happened. It was during the housing crash. Everything was going nuts. Hating my job, going through my second divorce, feeling like a real loser, and overweight, depressed, drinking. When I wasn't drinking, I was smoking weed, just back and forth, just one depressant after another depressant. And I hit my low point during that period, the low of lows. And it was at this time where I was up all night, right? So nothing but infomercials are on and whatever, and this infomercial was always playing. It was called Kettlebells. It was this Canadian dude that supposedly trained the stars, and I never even seen a kettlebell before that, and doing all kinds of funky moves, gunslingers, which I learned that works to kind of help teach you clean and all this stuff through that. But I had chosen my night to exit the planet, and I had my pistol, and sounds funny, but I had a fifth of whiskey and a pack of saltine crackers. So I would take a shot, eat a cracker, 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 look at the gun. Not ready. Take a shot, eat a cracker. And passed out, didn't use it. And that was a big wake up call in the morning, like, holy shit, dude, what is wrong with you, man? You've really got to get some shit figured out stuff. But
it's all good, man. It's all good.
And I say that I ordered it that night in that drunken stupor, but I can't totally. So I wasn't totally sure, like I said, if I had ordered it or not that night, but a couple weeks later, a box shows up at my door, and it's the freaking Kettlebells program. I know it sounds too crazy to be true, but it happened, right? And it probably sat there for a while, I don't know, but opened it up. And at this point in the house, I think I had a fish tank, a TV, and a lazy boy. That was my, and maybe a couple knives and a couple bowls. I don't know. But one thing after another happened, and I popped in one of those DVDs, and it had it's called Kettlebell Burn. I think some type of kettlebell strong and kettlebell core. I don't know, but it had I had a 5-pound rubber coated kettlebell, a 10-pound, and a 20-pound. Right. So throw in that DVD all alone in my living room, half-hour thing. Started playing with it. I'm at 250 or so, and just drenched. It's like, what in the hell is happening? Right. So I tried to be consistent with that for a little while. And then my Marine buddy, I went to high school with. We were kind of gym rats for a spell. He worked with me at the state, and as we're driving around killing time, I go, "Hey man, let's stop by my house. I want to put you through one of these kettle workouts." And mind you, he big, blonde-headed, fit Marine type, right? So we throw it in. I give him the 20-pounder. I grab the 10, and we started doing this kettlebell strong thing. And he's like, I'm sweating, but we both were kind of like, yeah, this is whatever, but it kind of feels like we should be wearing like tights and up the butt, like Susan Summers outfit. It didn't feel like grr, right? And at that time, I wasn't into the internet very much, as little as possible, right? So I didn't go in and further research kettlebells, but he did. And he goes, "Hey man, I ordered this kettlebell thing, enter the kettlebell with a 53-pound kettlebell." And he goes, "You need to check this out." So he sent me a link. I got goosebumps just thinking about it. And I was like, okay, this now, it had like that military feel. It had that like brotherhood, sisterhood. It had that minimum requirement to join the club. I was like, I like this, right? So we started working that Enter the Kettlebell program together. And that 53-pound kettlebell was just crushing us, right? I mean, crushing us. But it lit a fire in me. And I'm kind of making fun of that Kettleworks thing, but I'm not, because that was, as silly as it was the kickstart to what I'm doing today, right? So anybody that's listening to this, I don't care what you do. If you're trying to get back into fitness, if you want to grab a shake weight and start shaking it around, that may lead to something bigger and better, so do it, right? Don't question it, do it, and then research and find something else, right? Whatever. But so I started getting intrigued by it. So I started looking for coaches, right, in the area. And the closest one was in Seattle, Andrea Chang. And, at the time, man, she was it, especially up in the Northwest, right? I mean, she was it. So I called her up, gave her my story a little bit. And I said, "Hey, what's it take to come down and do like a session with you?" Right. And went down there, paid like some ungodly amount of money. And I was like, what? This is nuts. But she's a pro, right? And at that time, Clint and I were doing martial arts together, Kaju Kimbo and Filipino Kali Salat, really fun stuff. And I was getting fit again, fit her, I lost 20 pounds, whatever. I was at that 220, 230 range, feeling more confident, feeling ready to take on the world again, just things were turning in the right direction, right? Still hating my job, mind you, still losing my house, a lot of stuff. But after I saw Andrea, I was like, this is what a fitness coach is. It's not at the 24-hour fitness where Clint and I are at, I mean, yes, that's great. And there's a need for that, but it's not what I needed. I needed to like be picked apart and like move your toe like an eighth of an inch and you're going to get a better result. That's me. My personality wants that. And Andrea is the master of that, to a point where you're like, holy shit, is she here today? Because I'm going to get picked apart over here in the corner when I'm trying to play. But that's a good thing to a point, right? Obviously, right? Sure. When you learn skill. So after meeting her, I still didn't think I'm going to be a kettlebell coach or whatever, but she said, you should really sign up for this HKC. I don't know if you remember what that was, but that was that 1-day course where you learn like the goblet squat and the get up and maybe the two-hand swing.
Two-hand swing, yeah.
Yeah. So I signed up for that, practiced for a couple of weeks. And at that cert, it was like Doug Neapol, Czar Horton, a couple just really hard hitters. And Clint and I did it together. And I saw Czar's forearms and I thought, that's my goal, right? I want arms like that guy someday, right? And I want to be like confident and eloquent and just squared away as he portrayed himself in that that cert, right? You know, professionalism at the highest level, right? Like someone you would look up to in the military, someone you'd look up to at your job, you know, just that kind of person. And after it was over, they pulled us all in the room and they told Clint, they're like, hey man, I can see you joining our system. And me, they're like, hey, good job, dude. You know, so I was like, oh, whatever. But then I just kept hitting at it. And then Andrea said, you should sign up for the RKC. And that would have been in 2010, down in California, and I signed up for that. Barely made it. Like, you know, got my last snatch with like 5 seconds left, one of those guys, right? And back then they were doing the victim thing where they would send out stuff to the community and they would bring people in from the community, sign a waiver, and you had like 30 minutes to teach them a move or something, right? Which I thought was great, because you can learn this stuff, but if you can't regurgitate it and teach it, what really, you know, I mean, you're going to be a better practitioner for yourself, but you're not going to be a great coach, right?
Totally.
Right. And I got teamed up with an Army Ranger, hardcore dude, right? And I showed up, I'm like, I'm gonna be totally professional. I had like, you know, a Lululemon-ish, like collared shirt, and had my shorts on, you know, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. And then we get into it for a couple seconds and he rips his shirt off, he's all pumped, and I rip my shirt off, and we're just, you know, having the time of our life. And then Matt Shank, was an awesome dude, was my team leader, and he goes, hey man, I think I'm gonna have to fail you for that display over there with that guy. And I was like, I don't understand that. You know, I come from that community and I understood what he wanted and what he needed. And was he not swinging a kettlebell at the end of that safely? And he's like, well, you gonna do that with a grandma? I'm like, well, obviously not, bro. I'm gonna meet my people where they're at, right?
Yeah.
But so I ended up passing, and that accomplishment, as hard as it was, because when I left the cert, so during this process, I went from 250, I left the cert at like 175. And just shredded, right? And I'm, you know, and again, I was kind of on the divorce diet. I was just, you know, eating ham, not even bread, you know.
Yeah. Hams, ham sandwiches.
That's right. But yeah, man, that really, that weekend really kicked off, you know, my thought of, I'm gonna quit this job, and I don't care if I fail. If I'm a coach for 6 months, it'll be the 6 months where I've worked at something that really brought me passion, like legitimately, right? I was always good at every job I did, again, but none of them fulfilled me in any way, shape, or form, like none of them. And then, before I ramble on anymore, you know, you haven't had time to reflect on anything yet.
Dude, I love it, actually. I mean, because this is exactly what I was hoping to hear. Like, I love seeing all the steps that led to where you are, because I think a lot of people forget, you know, it's easy for people to forget just how important this is for people. I remember my RKC. What month did you do your RKC in 2010?
Gosh, I think it was like August. It was blazing.
Yeah, so you were just a couple months before me then, because mine was October of 2010. And I remember Dan John was one of the team leaders. It wasn't my team leader, but I remember he was there. And I overheard him talking about somebody on his team. It was an older guy, a guy in his 60s. And they were, you know, gathering their team together to let him know, you know, about their statuses. And he told the guy, you passed. And the guy like had tears in his eyes. He's like, thank you so much. And he was just, I wasn't there to hear this. I wasn't there to see it. I was there to hear Dan talk about it, you know, from a distance.
Yeah.
And said, you know, sometimes we forget how much this means to people.
Oh,
and it's, I couldn't think of a better summary of that, because like what you're describing, I was more proud to get my RKC than to get my bachelor's degree, which I worked, you know, for a lot longer to get, you know?
Yeah.
It's and I think even for the people who are not certified, it's like when they discover the kettlebell, it's like they finally discovered something that makes sense for fitness. You know, like they don't know why am I supposed to do biceps and triceps one day and then, you know, chest and back another, or whatever it may be. And this is no disrespect to bodybuilding. I think it's an excellent discipline, but it's not right for everybody. And I don't think it's right for most people to start with. I think what most people need to start with is something that teaches them how to use their body as a solid unit. And and then also teaches you to tap into sort of like these these primal primal movement patterns in your body, throwing things, like swing, like there's nothing more fun than that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think, again, people underestimate it within themselves. Like, they understand, okay, I really get a great feeling like this when I do this, but they don't give themselves enough credit for how far they've come. And that's why I love your story, because it's going like from really very humble beginnings, talking about warts and all, and how you got to where you are. And so many people forget, even within themselves, that they've come a long way. Maybe they were overweight, maybe they were picked last or second to last, like I was, like in elementary, middle, and high school. And it's great to know, like, you know what, if I can do this, what else can I do? And then use that tool that you've now got some competence with, to say, how much farther can I go? What else can I do? Like, all these things that I thought were limiters really weren't. And
Yes.
and so when you became certified as an RKC, now at this point you're thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to do it for 6 months and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. Maybe not. But like you said, you now had this spark of passion in you to do something that you cared about. It wasn't
Yeah.
just, getting yelled at for not doing the bureaucratic thing and doing a quarter of the
Yeah.
work that you could have
Yeah.
done in a given amount of time. Which, incidentally, is just as a very small side note, I lived in a kibbutz in Israel for like almost 6 months, many years ago. First day on the job, I worked at the what's called a refit in Hebrew, which is like a dairy farm. And I asked the guy, I was like, okay, so anything I should know about the job? And he said, don't work hard. And I said, got it. Like, don't work too hard. He goes, no, don't work hard. And this is, like, kibbutz is a commune, so it's very much like bureaucratic mindset as well. So I couldn't help but laugh when you said that
Yeah.
you got yelled at for working too hard. But now I want to move on to this next part, because this is the part I think is really interesting. You going into it, you're like, okay, like I said, we're going to give it 6 months, see what happens. When did you realize this is what you wanted to keep doing for a long, long time?
Well, so I get back from the RKC, and at this point, I'm, knee deep in the martial arts again. Been something I've dabbled with off and on my whole life, but I was into it, right? Into it, loving it. Confidence going good again, like I said. Still hated the job, but I had a different mindset. This is just a stepping stone, right? And our martial arts instructor, he was a retired EOD. So he had that kind of brotherhood mindset and all that good stuff as well. And I was like, hey, I just got certified, and I really think these kettlebells are like the perfect marriage to martial arts. And he was like, well, absolutely, because he actually quit holding pads for me after I got back from the RKC, because I really was able to sink in relaxation into tension, and I was getting more out of my kicks, more out of my punches. I was just so much more powerful and athletic, man. It was incredible. So anyway, I brought him in there, and then I started, people are, hey, can you teach me that move? I think that'd be great for jujitsu, the get up or whatever. So not thinking I'm coaching, I was coaching, right? Just teaching people, having a good time. And then my martial arts instructor, rest in peace, came down with leukemia, and he was training one of these kind of new age preachers, like look like Stone Cold Steve Austin, kickboxer, jujitsu practitioner, all that good stuff. And they had this little gym in town, or this little church in town, that had like a Hoosier style gym in it, like literally right out of the Hoosiers. And he's like, hey, we don't really use this, man. If you guys want to move your ring and all your stuff in here, as long as you don't have to go to our church, you don't have to do any of that stuff. As long as you give back to the community, we would love to have you. We'd love to take the pressure off of the rent for your facility and put that towards your healthcare, right? So hell yeah, let's do this. And so by this time, I started accumulating more kettlebells and whatnot. And then Clint and I came up with the idea, well, let's give back by having a morning kettlebell class. But back then it was more cross training, right? A little bit of kettlebell, a lot of circuits, a lot of stuff like that. And it was free, but there was donations, right? So we took 50% of the donations, bought new equipment, and the other 50% went to the church, right? Well, before you know it, depending on the season, during the summers, we had to be there at 5:30 because we started working with the DOT earlier. During the winters, we had to be there at 6:30 in the morning. And I think at its peak, there was like 20 to 25 people there, right? And it was going good, right? And my buddy, one day, he's like, bro, this is what you're meant to do. Like, you are as happy as you can be when you're doing this. You obviously are passionate about it. You're making differences in people's lives. And as much as I would hate to see you go, you need to quit this job and just do it. Right. So I started talking about that with friends and family. They're like, you're nuts. Don't do that. That's dumb. You're 30 some years old. You're going to go be a fitness trainer. Are you an idiot? You have you have benefits. You're making good money for the area. Don't be a jackass. Right. And I had this one, thank goodness for this guy, even though if I saw him again, I would have to literally restrain myself. I'm not going to lie. Right. But he was like an ex cop, and he was a bad cop, I would imagine. Right. So just a bully, and he was always like, just got off on trying to exude power over me. And one day he came in the office and he told me to do something, and I told him it's ridiculous. And he got in my face and was, doing that number. And I told him, if that finger touches my chest, I'm going to end you, like right now. It's over for you. I swear on everything I'm made of. If that finger touches me, I am going to end you. And it touched me. And, I got up and gave him the shiver and went over to get him. And the other guy in the office grabbed me. And then I walked from there over to the superintendent. I said, I'm gone. I'm out of here. Done. And he's like, no, we want you to stay. What can we do? I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm done. I'm freaking done. And so I called Andrea and I was like, hey, is there any way I can get a job down there? And she's like, sure. Come down here. You can start by helping around the studio. And so I would drive 60 miles down there, help around the studio, drive 60 miles back. And then she gave me my first client, which was this Marjana King lady, bless her. She was like 70 years old at the time, and had all kinds of cool goals about going to Morocco and having a great vacation. To make a long story short, when we started, she was deadlifting a 10-pound kettlebell off of like 6 yoga blocks before she went on vacation. 2.5 years later, she was doing 5x5 deadlifts with 48 kg and doing full get-ups with a 6 kg, and went and crushed that vacation. But anywho, she knew I was driving back and forth, and they had like a mother-in-law type of apartment in the basement. And she's like, Jeff, do you want to do this stuff? Is this what you want to do? And I'm like, yeah, I really like it. I think it's great. I go to work every day and I feel like I accomplished something worthwhile, and I really like it. And she's like, you can live down there for free until you build enough clients to go out on your own. So I started living there, cut my commute down dramatically, spent more time at Kettlebells, started coaching classes, started getting more clients, and had access to Pavel and all that stuff, because he would come and do relax and to stretch and all these cool workshops there. Had access to Czar and just some of the greatest coaches out there, right? And honed my coaching skills and worked there for quite a few years, and then got a offer to start up a kettlebell program at Elite Sports and Spine, basically kind of like working alongside an athletic trainer and helping in the rehab process and all that kind of stuff. And I figured I can't pass that up. That's a great opportunity to grow and learn more. And that's where I met Molly of the Fuel House. And and she was just the Fuel House. I saw that on a napkin before it came true, and worked at Elite. And she's always like, when are you going to come to me? And me being kind of loyal to a fault in ways, I'm like, well, I can't leave these guys unless there's good reason, right now. And the company dissolved because the two owners split and it just went away. So then I went over and started working at the Fuel House with Molly, and I would say that that place has been out of all of the stuff that I've done, probably the most complete gym that I can think of. It's a great combination of all walks of life. Barbells, kettlebells, body weight. The only machines in there are some rowers and some devil bikes or assault bikes, whatever people call those evil things, and good community. And from that journey of getting that kettle works to being at the fuel house, it's been great, man. And that's opened up opportunities. Like I said, I started working with Amazon Halo on their fitness app, kind of a Peloton-y type of situation. Going in there, getting makeup, getting my ears trimmed and my nose hairs, and trying to get all spoofed up and sharing that love of all this stuff on a huge platform like that. And it's just, I don't know how I'm still doing it, really.
It's incredible. And I think, one of the big takeaways that any of the listeners can hear from this is that, I don't think passion alone is enough to get you through anything. I think you have to have passion and forward intent. Like you've got to want to not just do something that you love doing, but you've got to want to love to do it better and always find ways to improve. And I think that being consistent and making your main focus, I'm going to show up and do my best, and understand that your best is going to grow as time goes on, is what leads to all these cool opportunities. I think there are just so many people out there who are living, as it's been said, quiet lives of desperation, because they just don't know anything else. And I would also say, it's maybe easier to reinvent oneself as we have done when you have fewer things that you've got to deal with. I don't think it's so easy to do that if you've got, a wife and kids and, a mortgage and all these other different things. But everybody can always strive to be a little bit better. And that can help you get you in the right mindset to make more improvements. And like you said, like even when you were still at the job you didn't like, you had a different mindset about it. You may not have liked it, but I bet you did it in a way that you could be proud of. And you felt better about doing it until, of course, you got to deal with this, bully ex-cop gent and decided it was time to walk out. But yeah, I think it's a phenomenal story. And I am not the least bit surprised you're working with Amazon Halo. Like you told me the other day, you're like, yeah, I'm doing, because I had seen it on your Instagram. It was like, oh, it's from the Amazon Halo shoot. I was like, I'm not like the least bit surprised that they chose Jeff. I'm not like, how did he manage that? It made perfect sense to me. So I think when you're in it, as you're there, you got a first person view the whole time. Then you look back and you're like, how did I do this? But I'm looking at it, from the outside, very far from the outside. And I'm like, that makes perfect sense. I get it. I can totally get it. No, it's very true. Well, I got to tell you, before we wrap up here, I mentioned that to my Facebook group. I have a Facebook group called the Hebrew Hammers Hidden Hideaway. I'm a big fan of alliteration, as you can see. So I was like, and I'm going to check now to see if we've got any more questions. I only announced this just very shortly before we got on, but I asked, hey, do we have any questions for Jeff? And we do have one. There's two. So Deb Kroll says she's very excited for this one. She's been following you for some time. She's an old school hammerhead, and she's been through a great many kettlebell, body weight, and all sorts of other certifications. So she's got very good taste, knowing that she's going to be looking forward to hearing this. And then Luke Atchley, who's also a former jarhead and a very smart kettlebell coach, says, what is your favorite whiskey currently?
Yes. Well, I love Blanton's. It's my favorite. It's hard to come by, unfortunately. Right. I'm still, every top of it has a horse and a letter, and you're trying to spell out Blanton's. Right. And I've yet to do that. And I just recently went on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, where you go around to all the distilleries there. And even in Kentucky, where it's made, I couldn't get it. Right. So when I do get it, it's great. but I love a lot of that Kentucky bourbons. I love the Angel's Envy. It's just so good. I don't know what it is. I love my Irish whiskeys, and not a huge fan of real peaty Scotch, but bourbons, rye. I like rye as well. But if anybody can come up with some Blantons, send it my way. I'll pay big dollar.
Keep that in mind, folks. I know we've got a wide array of folks who listen to this, so we might have a few people take you up on that. I was not even aware of all this stuff. I like whiskey. I don't drink it all that often because I actually didn't grow up drinking at all. I was real goody two shoes growing up.
Good for you.
I didn't drink before I even turned 21, and then I got to 21, and I was like, I just don't really see the point. But I do like whiskey. But for me, because I just never built up much of a tolerance, it's like I've got to drink it much earlier before I go to bed, because otherwise it interrupts my sleep. I don't know if you've got this problem, or if you're like immune to it, or if that's just me, or what the deal is.
Bro, I've had sleeping problems for as long as I can remember. I actually take medications to even get a little bit of sleep, so it's hard to say.
Well, yeah, I have to say, that part I don't know much about, but I can definitely tell you for sure that sometimes it's worth losing a little sleep over a good whiskey.
Yeah,
I've definitely been there before. Well, Jeff, where can people follow you online? I know you're very prolific, but where would be the best place if people want to follow you and soak up the knowledge bombs that you drop on a regular basis?
I would say, I'm most regular on Instagram. I do have Facebook accounts, but I don't go there. I don't go there anymore, really. And I don't have maybe I have a Twitter from way back in the day, but I haven't been on there for, probably. So maybe I went there for 2 days when I opened it 10 years ago. I don't know. Yeah. And then, of course, the cool thing about the Halo gig is they brought me in for an audition, and they really weren't visioning me doing kettlebells, but they said that during the audition I could teach anything I wanted to. So of course I brought a kettlebell, and I was like, hey man, if you want to introduce kettlebells to this app, I'm not the guy unless you let me do a kettlebell 101 series. Because I'm not going to just start putting workouts out there without at least trying to make people understand what they're doing. So they did they supported 100% me doing like a 4 video series on learning to swing, a video series on learning to get up, a video series on cleans and presses, some double bell work, some bottoms up work. So, if you're into the fitness tracker stuff and you want to go and sign in and pick up some of that stuff, that would be great. Because I really believe in skill, and if you're going to play with these things, you need to be obsessed with skill, and that obsession will make you strong as hell and fit and safe.
Amen. So Amazon Halo. You can also find him on Instagram. What is it? Sokol Strong? At Sokol Strong?
It's just Sokol Strong. Yeah.
Sokol Strong. All right. Twitter's like shouting into the void anyway. It's very hard. Don't worry about Twitter, but excellent. Yeah. Very good. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it was my honor, brother.
Honor was all mine. And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.